I don't know if we have
And
people in.
yes, that's good. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Ritika? Ritika, can we plop up the Menti, please? Hello, hello. And the link.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. As we're waiting for others to join, it'll be great if you could join us at Menti and share your reflections on the question that you see.
Hello, hello. As we have people coming in, I've added the Menti link on chat. Please go on to the link, and we're looking forward to hearing from you all as to what are some of the key moments in the MH ecosystem in 2023, based on what you think and what you've seen, experienced, been part of. The link is on chat, and you can just click on the link and respond to it. Jesse, Women Deliver, MH Day, Period Poverty Forum, Global Hygiene Symposium, Policy Changes, ISO, Uptake of Menstrual Cups, We'll wait for maybe another couple of minutes for people to join in before we begin. Okay. A very good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, um, to you all. Thank you for joining us today as your weekends and as a remarkable year almost draws to an end for the menstrual health community. Fireside Chats is a space to celebrate, showcase, and learn from the power of collective action for menstrual health and hygiene. We believe that through collaborative advocacy, pursuit of evidence based solutions, and exchange of learnings and insights, we can catalyze a global movement that propels MHH to the forefront of priorities. Fireside Chats is a collaborative initiative by the Global Menstrual Collective and the Menstrual Health Hub. We have Ina Yurga from Wash United collaborating with us this time. The 2023 Rapid Edition of Fireside Chats is exactly what the name suggests. We gather to reflect on shared accomplishments and look forward to the possibilities that await us in 2024. We promise to share the recording and highlights by email within the next week. We request you all to introduce yourselves over chat and share any questions, thoughts, reflections you have as the conversation moves forward. Um, Arundhati, Ina, and I are your hosts for the next 90 minutes. And it is truly a celebration to have you all join us in this discussion. We have laboriously put together some big hits, misses, and trends to look out for as 2023 comes to an end almost. Ina and I will be spending some time on highlighting these. We would also like to share the disclaimer that this is a snapshot and not a comprehensive list. So please, we encourage each one of you to participate and add your thoughts and reflections actively on chat. Um, Without further delay, over to you, Ina. Ritika, can we have the slide coming up?
Yeah, and thanks, Bhuwana. Hello, Arundhati, and hello to everyone far and close from Switzerland to Canada to Zambia. It's really great that we're all here together. So we're looking now at starting with the pivotal moments, and you already done the world cloud, and we've seen some topics coming up that I will also speak about. So I want to start with the biggest trend this year, and that has been strengthening the relevance and intersection of MHH in key relevant sectors and recognizing the life force experience. For most women deliver, there's been a huge opportunity to push the message that menstruation matters for gender equality. The conference was a key opportunity for the MHH community to come together and build new allies and anchor MHH in the discourse, from dedicated side events to booths to the period party. And Senegalese President Macky Sall challenged the host, President Kagame, to reduce taxes right in the opening. The integration between MHH and SRHR is still going strong, and the Global Menstrual Collective released their brief on the power of integration. We have seen work on family planning and MHH, and the contraceptive-induced menstrual changes community of practice was launched too. The linkages to sexual and gender-based violence and child marriages were highlighted, for example, during the Nepal's Menstruation Day. When looking at the life course experience, two themes, which are often interrelated, strongly push to the forefront of public attention. That has been workplace and menopause. An increasing discussion on MHH at the workplace is happening, however, largely in high-income countries, covering menstrual leave, provision of menstrual products, and including the needs of menopausal and perimenopausal women. We've seen workplace policies emerge in the UK, Scotland, and Canada. And we've also seen more and more attention by employers globally to address the issues. So as a culmination of this, we can really proudly announce that there is now a platform dedicated to the issue, the Period Positive Workplace Platform, where enterprises and organizations globally can register. Importantly, this was launched in Uganda to show that this is not only a high-income country issue, but also for everyone. As I mentioned, menopause has been an issue that's been looked at in this context, but also luckily even more, we've seen more evidence emerging, like a resource kit on wash needs for menopause. In Nepal's Practitioner Alliance has started to work on a toolkit. And yeah, I've also observed this. There's been definitely more and more public discourse and features of even prominent people talking about this. Also big in the media was the aspects of sport and menstruation, where women athletes gave voice to periods, such as the German soccer team for the World Cup, but also in types of the clothes that the sports people have to wear, and pain during sports and missed periods due to training and dietary restrictions. Bhuvana, over to you.
Thanks, Hina. Thanks for highlighting some of those intersections. Indeed, the crucial linkage here is the emphasis on elevating and amplifying marginalized voices, grassroots leaders, and movements to advocate for action from a menstrual justice standpoint. Notably, the ACMHM conference featured increased representation of grassroots leaders. MH Hub, transitioning to Uninhibited India this January, also strengthened grassroots voices from the global south. iRise Institute for East Africa hosted the second Menstrual Health Symposium for East Africa civil society and policymakers. There's also a growing and more potent call that emphasizes involving grassroots leaders and feminist leaders in addressing MHH.
Mm-hmm. A next trend that we've seen this year is a really critical articulation of the importance of market-based approaches. We've, for example, have seen a report by Boping and Heistra on menstrual product markets and low and middle income. The GIZ Invest in Jobs initiative had a side event at Women Deliver and commissioned Dahlberg for 8-country analysis. And with the Sanitation and Hygiene Fund, there is an organization that is looking at matched funding into the menstruation service chain. At the RGC members meeting happening later this year, participants really articulating the need for a choice in menstrual products. There's also a continuation of the work on the harmonization of product standards globally, with representation from several countries, including low and middle income countries. And I think someone mentioned that here in Menti. And besides standards, more innovation by companies with a focus on sustainability is happening. For example, I'm personally excited to see more period panties, and even with made from recycled plastic fabric that I've seen by Real Relief at Women Deliver.
Thanks, Hina. MHH is also being acknowledged as pivotal for achieving various SDGs. 2023 has made big steps towards more harmonized monitoring and data collection. Bangladesh, the Philippines, and Kenya are actively working on incorporating specific MHH indicators into their national surveys and monitoring systems. So we can see that the work from the indicator group is now being applied at national level in various countries. Bangladesh is also likely to implement the new MHH module introduced in the multiple indicator cluster surveys in 2024. The JMP report also extensively covered gender-related aspects with specific highlights on menstrual hygiene management and proposed a new draft of indicators for gender and WASH, building on existing initiatives. This is essential given the post-SDG processes and also events like the UN Water Conference played a pivotal role by dedicating a session solely to MHH, emphasizing the importance of monitoring. The United Nations General Assembly further concentrated its efforts on conveying this message.
Mhm. And yeah, besides the work that's happening on national monitoring, as Bhuwana just shared, we have seen more country evidence emerging. For example, the UNICEF WaterAid Burnett status report on MHH for Asia Pacific, the Girls Up overview for Latin America, and more African country snapshots. And as a still a very strong theme, period poverty has around period poverty, there have been a few new country studies released that looked at that. And evidence is so critical for advocacy. And the theme of this year's Society for Menstrual Cycle Research conference clearly articulated this nicely. The period is political, menstrual research, policy, and practice. My personal highlight advocacy moment happened in February in Kenya, where Gloria Orova was asked to leave the parliament over a period stain on her clothing. And that sparked a huge debate and discussion to break the stigma on periods.
Moving on to the digital sphere, the landscape of menstrual health tech is in broadly three categories, not exhaustive, which are all strong indicators of menstruators' current needs. One, the MH tech has transformed with the emergence and rise of period tracking apps such as Oki, wearable devices encompassing menstrual life cycle tracking, and now smart cups capable of monitoring blood volume and color to share health insights. Another emerging trend involves AI, exemplified by Mira's consistent efforts in delivering data-informed solutions and research-based insights that are both contextual and nuanced. Additionally, there's also a growing array of like apps that are focused on menstrual health education and awareness. The third broad category is social media, and the impact of Menstrual Health Day has expanded significantly, particularly through the strong presence of social media in Africa and Asia. Uh, there's also a rising trend of citizen engagement in vocalizing menstrual needs and destigmatization on platforms like Instagram and X. Ina, I'll invite you to share maybe some insights on what we've probably missed out on, or are things that are a bit more silent or slow in the ecosystem at the moment as we see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to start with a slow issue, and this is like country policy. There'd be not like big, I mean, I've shared before some policy around menopause and the workplace, but in terms of a standalone MHH policy, we haven't seen that. But I want to share a notable inspection, and this is around taxation, where after years of advocacy, Ghana has dropped finally the VAT. And we've seen a few period poverty related policies as well in USA and Canada. So yes, it's been slow, but for example, India has started this year to develop a national policy. So we're going to revisit this next year in our recap. And then I want to encourage you all and really use the evidence for your advocacy and learn from Ghana. Be persistent in your advocacy efforts.
Thanks for that shout out to Ghana, Ina. Although there is a growing discourse around menstrual problems and disorders such as endometriosis and PMDD, they still lack sufficient attention and funding in scientific research. But that's also in the general realm of female health-focused studies, including the social sciences. While there's some focus on particular aspects such as say, family planning or menopause and addressing menstrual health through the life course, the perspective of considering it within the broader life cycle remains underdeveloped, as also observed in discussions at the SMCR conference. Conversations at the intersections of hormonal health, mental health, and physical health during the menstrual cycle are notably lacking as well, with exceptions, I think, being discussed related to sports and in high income countries. But we are curious to hear more on chat in terms of how you think this is happening in your countries. Ina.
Mhm. Yeah, I think we all agree that 2023 is a year of grave humanitarian and emergency situations. And there's a record number of 110 million people displaced, and a quarter of them are menstruators who are likely to have their period. So the work on MHH in emergencies is a bit too silent, in my opinion, given that this is a really serious issue and will probably increase. And so the trend is that these emergencies, the number of people will even increase. I hope that it's just a matter that the actors and practitioners are in the field and doing the response, and it's not because we don't see this as an important. So that there has been work that I also want to share as an exception, for example, by Jane Wilbur and Chloe Merson on MHH for people with disabilities in emergencies, IFRC's inclusive toilet design, a webinar series that we just started, and some work also at the frontiers of in Southern America for the migrating population there. So I cannot stress enough. So I just call out you that we really need to stress the importance of MHH in emergencies, and we need to be louder and ensure that it's mainstreamed.
Moving on to menstrual health interventions, the latest systematic review by Lancet has shed light on the impact of many MHH interventions in low and middle income communities. Countries. However, there is still a deficiency in comprehensive assessments and evaluation, as the study also observed, that delve deeper into determining what strategies are effective, and also like what are the reasons behind a program success or a program just falling short, right? This suggests a continued need for more thorough investigations to enhance our understanding of what successful interventions are and what are the factors that are contributing to this efficacy as well. Additionally, democratization in terms of collection, analysis, and accessibility to data and research is needed to bridge the gap between the global south and the global north in terms of knowledge, nuance, and resources.
Yeah, and Bhuvan, I just want to make a last point. You mentioned resources, and I think the biggest gap of all is funding. Investment into MHH for implementers is still not adequate. While we as the sector are growing in relevance, and we still have not seen an equal growth in funding. There's hardly a landmark financed by donors, but again, with some notable exceptions, is an upcoming French government funding for grassroots, and Canada's Menstrual Equity Fund, and domestic funding for period poverty. So, and in hindsight, one of the funders, like the Case for Her, they released a statement report on their lessons learned in a decade of investment into MHA. So really a key resource for everyone who wants to approach donors and so on. This is really making the case for investment. It's a really convincing story. So yeah, we need to strengthen advocacy for more funding.
Thanks, Ina. We will now be looking at some of the emerging trends that we should be watching out for. Things that have been spoken about, but maybe not enough. Things that have been spoken about and are being unpacked right now and might be things for us to focus on in 2024. I'll pick my top three. addressing data privacy and security concerns in the context of femtech innovations and monitoring and evaluation of programs, by obtaining explicit user consent instead of assumed consent, minimizing data collection to essentials, implementing security measures are vital. While there are dialogues about issues with data privacy on tracking apps, there is no clear, actionable, charted out as a response to these, breaches. An approach, an interesting one for us to think about, and it's something that we're also experimenting with at Uninhibited as we speak, is for us to explore in our own work what it would be like to adopt a user-centric approach by empowering users with control over their data, whether it's design of data collection processes, or data collection analysis and owning that data, right? So that's something that I'm going to sort of leave here as a reflection. The second is we see an increased effort in evidence building to measure the impact of menstrual health on well-being, education, health, and other less explored intersections. There's still much to be done to develop contextual evidence based on the realities of a particular region. Also, as Ina already mentioned, the longitudinal cohort study in Bangladesh is definitely one to look out for. A question that I would like us to again reflect upon, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. How are we making space for research coming from implementers across the world and specifically in the global south, given the limited resources they're operating with, but also the wealth of data they have access to? Um, and the third, and I will close here, there have been dialogues on feminist foreign policy and the role of feminist funding networks, with a conversation that sparked around expanding the definition of SRHR to include menstrual health that women deliver this year. How do we include menstrual health more actively in these dialogues? And how ready are we as an ecosystem uh, for this integration? And now I invite Ina to share her top three.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in Germany, our feminist foreign policy does mention menstrual health and hygiene. So it's a big step that it's so explicitly stated in there. So we hope we see also the implementation of it. So here are my top three picks to watch out for. Firstly, I'm glad to see more and more work emerging from Latin America. So we mentioned the regional overview. We have coalitions such as Digna Mexica. The pandemic period teams has advocates in the region. Educational tools from Latin America are emerging. And I've seen a couple, not only a couple, quite a number of MH Day celebrations. I think we all need to strengthen our Spanish and Portuguese. The second pick is youth engagement. This is not an emerging trend, but I want to really adamant and call out everyone to be better in working with youth and build them into the design and implementation of programs and solutions, because give them the space and voice they truly deserve. And my last point is climate change and MHH. I mean, the just COP28 just finished, and climate change will have an impact on how women and girls are able to manage their menstruation, from water scarcity to flooding and more insurgencies. There will be more emergencies. There will be more challenges. Preparedness and building the resilience is key, especially for populations that are already facing menstrual inequalities. And so I just want to call out that we as a sector need to strengthen the nexus between menstrual hygiene, health, environment, and sustainability.
Thanks, Ina. I know this sounded long, but also would like to share that this was not exhaustive, which is why I would love to hear more from you all in terms of what is it that we probably missed out on and that you think is a key moment. And yeah, I would now invite Arundhati to initiate our panel discussion. Arundhati, over to you.
Bhuvna, Nina, thanks. That was a fantastic overview. It's been quite the year when we look back on the kinds of global forums, country level events, regional forums that we've had, kind of research that's come out. And of course, there have been some significant misses that we hope to kind of begin to address next year, in addition to all this great stuff to watch out for. Now, we want to hear from 4 panelists who we've brought together today to reflect on some of the stuff that has been highlighted already. But we've got 4 speakers, Diana Nelson, Dilip Patupala, Dr. Lara Owen, and Adrian Dungas with us. We're going to ask them some questions to help us kind of think a little more about what we have seen this past year and what we have to look forward to in 2024. So I'm going to start with Diana. Diana is joining us from Days for Girls and joining us from Uganda today. Diana, you've been in a great position that you've attended many of the global gatherings, from Women Deliver to most recently the Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition meet that happened in Ghana just about a month ago. And you've also been a part of Africa Coalition's menstrual day event that happened over 2 days. Now, you've seen also the power of collective action, whether it's through ACMH, the Period Positive Workplace Initiative that you and others have launched this year. Now, from all the kind of the global gatherings, regional gatherings that have happened, what has really struck you? What do you think has helped really move the needle on the MHH dialogue this year that perhaps you've not seen in previous years?
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's so exciting to have sat here and listened to all that's taken place in 2023. I think we're doing great work. We have more to do. But yeah, what struck me this year, I think for me, the increased exposure, really seeing menstrual health being elevated in the discussions at all the conferences I went to. I felt like there was more panels, there were more sessions on menstrual health. Also, the exhibitions, there was a wide range of products, not just, reusable products, but watches to track your cycle, educational material, with more and more partners contributing to that. That was great to see. Also, the comments that were given within each session I participated in, I felt like there was always a hand being raised, trying to bring up menstrual health, making the linkages there, very exciting. Another thing I saw was the youth activists were really involved. And part of that, I think that one thing that came away that I saw was this power of choice. We need to give back the choice to the women and girls and people who menstruate for how they want to manage their periods, what products they need. Also, I think another thing that came out was a lot of the research that was provided, especially on the market-based approach at these events. That allowed a lot of us to sit and have discussions about, what do we do? How do we advance this in the menstrual health field? And for me, I realize now more than ever, it's time to be focused on that market-based solution so that we can have better sustainability. Yes, there will always be donor funding, but how for the poorest of the poor, but how do we advance this to be a market competition so that we can drive the cost down, but also have a more sustainable answer. And then also I thought with the Period Positive Workplace, the power of collaboration, as lots of us are working to bring private sector in, we're seeing they're responding. Especially as Ina was just saying, watch Latin America, Dominican Republic and Mexico. They've got lots of organizations on board there. So it's been exciting to see how we've provided a way again for private sector to come in. And then, you said, what are some ways deliberately we've seen the needle move? Just quickly, I want to share just 2 examples. After I left the meeting from Ghana, it was really neat to see how now menstrual health is being integrated into the various working groups of the reproductive health supply chain. For example, the menstrual health working group is now working with the marketing development and advocacy working group as they're setting a strategy, looking at a high-level way. How can we ensure menstrual health is being integrated into our various activities, both at a high level and then really specifically identifying activities? We're building new allies, as Ina kind of touched on. We have more allies who are making those linkages now to see how does this integrate into their work. Just in closing, my last thought, I wanted to share, I thought this speaks volumes about how we're gaining allies. Jay Gribble, who's the senior director at Palladium and the deputy project director of Propel, after he left a menstrual health session at the reproductive session in Ghana, he said, my quote, "My eyes have been opened. I've had tunnel vision for far too long." He went on to say how he realized when he was thinking about reproductive commodities, he didn't think of menstrual health. And he finished with saying, quote, "There has been virtually no attention paid to menstrual hygiene products, which seems to be the stepsister of family planning. In my job," he said, "I need to consider a broader set of reproductive health supplies, and I'd put menstrual hygiene products at the top of that list." So I love as we get more allies to support our work, that will help move the needle forward. So I'm excited for what's happened last year and the allies we've gotten, the attention we've gotten, and looking to see how it'll go forward.
Thanks, Diana. I think it has been a great achievement that in many of the global gatherings that we've had folks who work on menstrual health be a part of so many of those conversations, and it certainly does help to place it on the agenda in some way. Thanks for that. Dilip, we're going to move on to you now, and there's been a lot of discussion, as we saw from Bhuvna and Ina, that there's so much of evidence, insights, research that's come to the fore this year across a broad array of issues, right from menstrual cups to looking at the role of entrepreneurs and how they are addressing stigma through products, etc. But we've also seen this year that the voice of grassroots movements, grassroots leaders, communities, have been given greater importance. And all of this has been relevant as we're trying to give shape to the movement as we move forward. Given your position and your work right now, especially sitting on an AI tool like Mira and what you're seeing happening in the ecosystem, can you share some thoughts on what do you think has worked well and perhaps really well this year to kind of bridge some of these evidence gaps that we've struggled with in the past, especially between what we consider as the research that's emerging from the global north and strong insights and field voices that are emerging from the global south?
Absolutely. Thank you, Arundhati. Thank you for asking this question, because as we took over the leadership of MH Hub, I think one challenge that we are really working towards is how do we bridge this gap between the global south and global north, and how do we improve exchange of learnings and insights. And that was the mission behind MH Hub and the first offering from MH Hub, that is Mira today. Before I get into how can we, what we have seen improve in terms of exchange itself, I think the conversation also starts with like, what is evidence that we are looking at? And I think, like you rightly mentioned, Arundhati, that evolution also has happened this year, that we're not looking at evidence just as academic research and insight, but we're also starting to acknowledge that there is a lot of local resource and insight that we should acknowledge as insight, and use that to build local narratives and use that to inform the decisions that we are making on the top by funders or policymakers or researchers themselves. So I think that progress we have made quite well this year in terms of looking at both sides, and that also happened because there are more global south representatives who have a seat at the table, who are able to have these conversations with funders and be part of collectives like Global Menstrual Collective and take up leadership like the global platform of Menstrual Health Hub. So that's one huge progress that I have seen in this year. And while that happens, the parallel realization that we had at MH Hub was, okay, there is academic research that is conducted by academic researchers, but there is also parallel stream of evidence and insight that is building in the ecosystem. That is, one, we have more local researchers that are emerging. From an India perspective, we have seen some incredible work by Sivakami, Karan Babbar, Arundhati, yourself, How do we really like look at this in parallel with the evidence that is coming in global? And two, the new age organizations are able to look at data as an important tool to inform decisions in terms of strategic decision making and narrative building. So we've seen some incredible progress with organizations like Project Bala or Asan Cups, who have really used data in India as a means to be able to build the narrative of the work that they're doing. So how do we really use all of this in being able to shape the right kind of narrative and exchange is something that we at MH Hub have spent a lot of time thinking about. While we have also seen some trademark developments globally with like the meta-analysis and global indicators and the case for her 10-year report, etc. Like we also have seen regional snapshots that have emerged. Like Days for Girls has done some beautiful work with the regional snapshots in Africa, and recently attended a conference where Sulabh International in India has built snapshots of the states and districts around menstrual health. So there is more and more information that is available on both sides, from an academic research point of view and from a regional point of view. So how do we really ensure that there are right tools for us to be able to exchange and make this exchange seamless is something that we really have put thought into when we thought about Mira as a platform. While I'll spend a minute talking about Mira and not more, while the intention of Mira is really seeing it has like a one place knowledge hub for all the insight that is there. It could be academic research, or it could be field insight, it could be stakeholder information, so that any of us can actually go to the chatbot and actually like ask a question and really see those resources and access those links seamlessly, etc. And we're doing this by partnering with local networks, like how we have done with MHAI in India. So we're hoping to partner with more networks across the world so that we're able to bring in that like field insight to a global level and a global insight to probably a field level. But while this happens, we also have seen parallel streams of work that have emerged, like MHH Connect by MHAI is turning out to be a very vital tool in India in being able to centralize the national level knowledge and stakeholder information within the country. And ACMH has done some good work. Days for Girls has done some great work in being able to bring it all together. So there is more local platforms and tools that are emerging, especially in this year, is what I've seen as a pattern. So how do we really acknowledge this at a global level and build this global narrative is something that we all need to think about a lot more. Lastly, I feel while we have done a lot of this progress, what we are still kind of need to pay more attention to is what are the indigenous ways of data collection and insight building, and how do we really look at that playing a role in the work that we're doing in the narrative building of menstrual health. So what are the indigenous ways that we need to acknowledge that other sectors have started doing already? And I don't see that happening within the menstrual health ecosystem a lot. How do we acknowledge local researchers' efforts a lot more? How do we really have intentional collaborations between global and local stakeholders, practitioners and researchers, for us to be able to build a stronger narrative is something that we are thinking a lot more. But I do think there is a need for us to adopt tools like MHH Connect and Mira for us to be able to exchange knowledge and bridge this gap closer, so that we're able to learn not just from academic research, but from the narratives that are emerging on the ground, which are often missing in global conversations today.
Thanks, Philip. I think your last 2 points really struck, looking at other kinds of research, indigenous research, other research methodologies, which may not be what we consider as academically rigorous, but still provide important insights and direction to work on MH. How can we support that further? How can we support local researchers? It's a great point. I think there's also the looking at local, regional, national level platforms that are bringing together research and ensuring that greater linkage with what's happening globally. And, I think it's a great, it is a great idea, and we do have to figure out how do we do it, and also how do we engage our stakeholder base in regions, in countries, and globally to engage with these platforms, because we can set up platforms, but how do we get our community and our growing community to engage with it is something that we do have to think more about and figure ways to enable that in 2024. Thanks. Lara, on the topic of research, it's great to have you with us, because you've been looking at research on menstruation, menstrual health for a long time. And, you have a great bird's eye view on this. Given the kinds of research that we've seen this year, right from looking at building markets for menstrual health to, a longitudinal cohort study that started, as well as the integration of family planning and menstrual health. When you look back, what has really struck you about the research and evidence that's come out this year? And what do you think is giving us direction as we look towards 2024? Over to you, Lara.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. There's so much to talk about. Obviously, it's difficult to do in a short period of time. One thing I would say before I get into the research that I've been particularly interested in this year is that I think we have to be careful about setting up a binary between academic research and grassroots work. And because really they need to be talking to each other constantly. And we see great research happening in different contexts, and we also see bad research happening in different contexts. So, but without rigorous research, we can't really professionalize the field and get in major funding for it. So the grassroots needs academia and vice versa. And my work at the moment is really about bridging that apparent divide between those different areas. So I'm teaching, sorry, it's just telling me it looks like I've switched to a different language and it wants me to confirm that I'm speaking English. Sorry, I've taken care of it. I'm teaching a course which has people from all over the world, with about 50-50 people from the global north and global south. And it's wonderful to see how being in the same room, even when it's online, but being in the same space actually moves this whole process forward in terms of how we produce knowledge, where the knowledge is being produced, and how accurate and useful it is. So in terms of the research that's been done this year, I have been particularly interested in the research coming out on the relationship between trauma and menstrual health, which I think is a really important area that we need to do a lot more work in. And so there's two papers I've pulled out from this year. One is by Alexandra Hillcoat and others, which came out in the Journal of Human Reproduction. And the title of the paper is Trauma and Female Reproductive Health Across the Life Course. And part of the rationale for the paper is that they really want to motivate a research agenda for looking at trauma, but they also very interestingly propose a physiological pathway through which trauma has a direct impact on the menstrual cycle and menstrual health. So it's very important that more work is done on this, that we come to understand it, especially at a time when we've got several major wars going on the planet, as well as climate change, which are extremely traumatic experiences and affect women often disproportionately. And then the other paper is trauma, lifetime experiences of violence as a risk factor for endometriosis. Most of the work on trauma so far has been related to endometriosis. We're starting to see it broaden out now, but this paper is really important. This was published in the Journal of Psychosomatic and Obstetrics and Gynecology. It's by Goenken Jan and a team who I think they're Dutch. And the study investigated the impact of lifetime experience of violence on the course and severity of endometriosis. And that's coming off a line of research in that area over the last 10 years, but we're getting more and more knowledge about the relationship between severe menstrual symptoms and violence across the life course. So we already know that there's a relationship between childhood abuse and the development of endometriosis, but now we're getting some more information across the life course. So I think that's a very important area, and the relationship between mental health and the menstrual cycle is something that we also have some understanding about in terms of how hormonal contraception that suppresses menstruation impacts on menstrual health, which we've known for a long time that the incidence of depression and anxiety is higher in people who, particularly who've been on long-term hormonal contraception or medication for one reason or another. But we don't know enough about this. So, and because it's so convenient in many societies to keep women on hormonal contraception, there's been, I think, an unwillingness to really look at the impact of these. The other area which has been discussed already today is the relationship of working life and working life patterns to menstrual health, and that's related to the introduction of new workplace policies. I just want to highlight something which hasn't been mentioned yet, which is that this year the British Standards Institution published some guidelines for menstrual and menopausal workplace policies, which is a major contribution, really, major development, because it's a very mainstream British government funded organisation. And I was involved in the consultancy period on that, which there may be other people here who were also involved in that. And that is now going out to the International Standards Organization, which is planning to publish guidelines for workplaces throughout the world, which will be published in 2025. That's their plan, because these things take a long time to develop, because there's it's a lengthy process. But I think that's a very important development. And if you're interested in the workplace, do go and look at the BSI guidelines. Somebody's put up a link. Thank you, Ina. I'll put in the link for that other paper, Ina, which I see you couldn't find in the chat in a minute. Yeah, so those are my main, I mean, there's so much is happening. Just to give a context of the number of peer-reviewed academic papers published in academic journals when you search for the term menstrual health. So last year it was 2,462, and that's grown in 20 years from 307 in 2002. And it goes up every year and is doubling around every 4 or 5 years, with really big growth over the last 10 years. And even actually in the last 5 years, we're seeing it going up a lot. So we're getting much more, a much stronger evidence base on which to go to governments and large institutions and say, you really need to do something. So I'm really pleased with how that's developed. Okay, thanks very much, everyone.
Great, thanks, Lara, and thank you for putting that perspective on the number of papers that we've seen last year. Do you have a count for the number of research that's come out in 2023, I wonder?
Well, yes, but the year hasn't finished, and a lot of papers don't get added in until after the year. So at the moment it's 2,095, but I would expect it to be, quite a bit more than that when it's actually all tallied for 2023.
Great, thanks. And Lara, thank you. I think you brought in a really important component on issues related to gender-based violence and trauma and how that's affecting menstrual health. And thanks for highlighting that. Adrian, thanks for joining us. We've been seeing a slow and a growing interest in the market lens for menstrual health. And while I think we may understand this a little differently, it's certainly something that is an important trend for us to watch out for in 2024. Given your work with the Sanitation and Hygiene Fund and a focus on menstrual health markets, we'd like to hear from you on what have you seen that's happened in 2023 that makes you hopeful for us to take a market-based lens to menstrual health. Over to you, Adrian.
Sure. Thank you very much, Arundhati. And I hope you can hear me loud and clear. We didn't get a chance to do an audio test.
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Perfect. That's great. All right. Yeah, well, I agree that 2023 has been indeed, I'd say, it's not so much that market-based approaches haven't been around, but it's like slowly people are starting to notice it and we're galvanizing momentum. There's a few things I want to touch upon and then a bit of a reflection. So in general, I think in the areas of research, some of the things have already been mentioned, great efforts by Histra, Bopping, funded by the Gates Foundation, two different studies that have come out looking at markets in low middle income countries, and in the last week or so, a report on the potential for reusable menstrual products in that space. I think that is hugely important for people to better understand what the potential is, and also to provide some nuance about product access and what we talk about when we say people currently can't access a product. It's not always the question of
Adrian, I'm
yes.
just going to stop you and ask you to slow down a little bit because
Sorry.
your voice is a
Am I
bit
breaking up?
muffled. No,
All
you're
right.
just muffled. So if you could just speak a little slower, it's easier for our audience.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I will do that. Yeah, this is the downside of travel and work commitments. So, yeah, so ultimately having that nuance and that understanding of where demand sits, what kind of products people are looking to access, and what sort of the potential ways are in which we could use markets to provide that. I'm very excited to see that RHSC is going ahead with the second round of the LEAP report. We've been speaking to many researchers, and in the next year we will see the second landscape analysis coming out, which will give us a lot more insight. I think what's nice for people to have a look at is a joint study that was funded by SHF, conducted by PSI and a group of great researchers looking at the current research on menstrual health and hygiene and looking how that reflects in terms of certain monetary returns when we're doing MH interventions. That should come out in the next week or so, so keep a close eye on the social media from PSI and SHF. But also seeing how academics in general are engaging with the topic. Both of us were at the Global Hygiene Symposium last week, and we saw economists engage with different researchers thinking about cost effectiveness analyses and returns and the potential impact of investing in mental health and hygiene. And that does start to relate quite closely to what our markets can offer. The second point I want to raise is around the growing community. The Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition was mentioned earlier. The meeting in Accra was definitely a very important one that brought together professionals that have been working on providing reproductive health commodities for decades. But now looking at menstrual health and hygiene for the first time through that lens and seeing the overlap, the potential, uh, but also the potential that menstrual health and hygiene can bring in markets to help drive access to further reproductive health products and services. So there is really a win-win. It's not as if we're only asking something of our colleagues in other sectors. The ISO standards development, the TC338, is really starting to gather up steam. The second meeting took place online just last week, and we can really see that the momentum is growing, and they're tackling a key barrier that many companies are experiencing when it comes to providing menstrual products to markets. And of course, you have been actively involved yourself in India, engaging different stakeholders to start the conversation on market-based approaches. So it's happening at all levels. We also see a lot of new solutions and new commitments from GIZ that is offering new opportunities for grant funding through Invest for Jobs, to AFD that have launched and been running several programs, all with a market-based lens baked into that, from private-public dialogues to supporting reusable menstrual product manufacturers and much more. And a really important piece that I would like to shed some light on is the work by DFAT, Red Hat Impact, supported by many other players for a trade financing vehicle that's now going into its second phase next year, that is really looking at very innovative ways of supporting small-scale manufacturers to leverage the advantages of procurement at scale and reducing risks from supply chains. And it has proven to be extremely effective and surprisingly capable at being cost recovering. So something to read up on for all of you. I promise it's an interesting read. But ultimately, and more importantly, I think the overall momentum around market-based approaches is something that's resonating with a much wider audience. Because for the first time, we are actually presenting a very solid case, a theory of change, of how we're structurally going to shift the way that vast majority of people are going to be accessing menstrual products in the future. Something that has the potential for structural change, but also a theory of change that has ultimately an exit strategy where we aim to have a functioning market that is delivering menstrual products to a much larger share of the population than we are doing today. And let me stop there because I know I'm going over time.
Thanks, Adrian, and we hope to see more of these discussions in 2024. Now, to all our panelists, I want to ask you one last question before I hand over to Bhuvna to hear your thoughts. Is that, and just under a minute for each one of you, is what's your aspiration, given what you've seen in 2023? What's your aspiration for the menstrual health and hygiene movement in 2024? And what do you want to leave with us, your audience, today, as to what we can do? Diane, I'm going to circle back to you. What's your aspiration and what's your ask of us?
Good question. First, thank you so much for everything. I think we have to keep a holistic approach to this. And there's a couple things I would add. We need to get private sector involved. If we could go out and advocate and help them understand, there'll be different ways they can get involved. I think the global standard, ISO TC 338, what Adrian talked about, if we could have a global standard that could harmonize things would help. And then I think one last thing, choice. Let's provide choice to the women and girls and people who menstruate, giving them the power to decide what they can use. Those would be, yeah. So let's advocate for that in our education material as well.
Thanks, Diana. I like that. We should, the choice and the autonomy to choose is really critical. Dilip, over to you for your aspiration and your ask of all of us.
Love this question, Arundhati. I think it is localizing collective action. I think we need more local networks, more local researchers, more local tools. That's the only way we'll be able to build global collective action. So I would like to see a lot more active local tools and local networks in the next year.
Thanks, Dilip. A powerful ask. Lara, over to you. What's your aspiration and ask?
Oh, it's such a fantastic question. I think where I am at the moment is I really want the understanding that menstruation really matters and that how societies treat and conceptualize and organize menstruation tells us an enormous amount about how they see women's health, how they look at the cyclical nature of life on this planet that we're on, how they look at sustainability, whether, what their priorities are. And I think that's just that centrality, actually, of the menstrual cycle to the experience of being human beings, and that the way that we treat it just gives us so much information. I think I'd like to see that becoming much more widely understood and really, overcome the marginalization of menstruation that has been normal for so long. Thanks.
Thanks, Lara. And lastly, Adrian, over to you for your aspiration and ask.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm going to focus on the ask in that case, and that's, I guess, a simple ask to all of us in the room, and that's to further familiarize ourselves with market-based approaches. I think that we're going to need everyone in the room to have a very thorough understanding of what that actually means. We're not talking about selling out the end user, placing profits over people. No, we're looking at sustainable ways to ensure long-term continued access, and that means that we all need to understand the part that we can play and how that works. And my advice is not only to try to see how we do that within menstrual health and hygiene, but look at examples from other sectors. How have condoms become widely available in the market? What have manufacturers together with NGOs and donors done to make IUDs and other family planning commodities available? And what are the strategies that we can learn from that? What did they do well? And what are some of the traps we might not want to fall in again? And I think that the more brains dedicate their power and their time to figuring out how to do that, the more successful we're all going to be. And I really look forward to engaging with more of you on this topic. So yeah, use Christmas time to read up and come up with new ideas.
And on the reading up, I think, Adrian, you mentioned a paper or a report and also a TOC. So if you have links to that are accessible to you, please do put them in the chat box. Otherwise, send this to us so that we can send it out to our audience when we send out the video and recap from this.
I will.
Again, fantastic. Thank you to our wonderful panelists, Diana, Philip, Lara, and Adrian for joining us, especially Adrian, who's in transit, and others as well. And with this, I'm going to hand over back to Bhuvna. Over to you.
Thank you, Arundhati, and thanks everyone for sharing such useful insights. And what we would like to do, maybe for the next 5-7 minutes, is hear from all the other participants. In terms of whether you have thoughts, reflections, or questions for any one of the panelists or some of us here. Yeah. You can either put it in the chat box or raise your hand, and then we can unmute you for you to like ask a question.
We have a really quiet room. It's the beginning of the holiday season. We can feel that.
Yeah. Yes, Carlos.
Hi, this is Carlos Carrion Crespo from the ILO. Let me put my camera in. Um, I'm just posting in the chat box a publication that we made. We organized from the ILO the World Toilet Day in 2016 that was dedicated to sanitation and jobs, and we published self-training handbook on access to wash in the workplace. And we found that there were 10 ILO conventions that were in different sectors, and many others that deal with hygiene in general. So we highlighted them, and then we included a module on access to menstrual hygiene in the workplace. So I'm going to put it on the
Yes,
the
please.
in the chat.
Yeah.
So you can take a look at it. There's actually two versions. The second version, I'll look for the second version and post it.
Yeah.
The second version is more directed at middle managers and labor leaders. And it's published in English, but it has also been translated to the Chewa language of Malawi and more recently to Malagasy. So I'll just put it in the chat box.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks for sharing this insight and the resource.
So it's a very incipient thing in the island, but the workers, the trade unions who actually have a full vote in the governing body and the conference of the ILO are pushing for more inclusion of menstrual hygiene in the work of the ILO.
Thank you.
So,
Mahi, you had something to share?
Thank you very much. I'm happy for this meeting that has been rich in information sharing, but I want to share with you resources. We made the research and we were able to come up with a handbook information about menstrual hygiene and management. I think it could be very important for this team or these people who have been in the meeting. It has been made with a lot of emphasis on menstrual hygiene and management with different countries and continents. So it is rich and it is a stickyard for much of the information in these areas we are discussing here. I have already shared the link.
Thank you.
But you can also access the link from our website under resources. You look for Uganda Youth Skills Training Organization, and then you go under the topic of resources. Yeah. You will be able to access the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mahi. I'd also request everyone to keep our comments short. And we would like to hear thoughts and reflections on the conversation so far and what's happened in 2023 so far. And please do share the resources in the chat only. Thank you. Enoch.
Yeah, Enoch, we can't hear you very clearly. Maybe you're having connectivity issues.
We have Irambona. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right.
Yeah, that's the right way to say my name. Thank you so much. I just have like something like a question. Maybe one of the speaker can answer to it. I know I'm from Burundi. And I know so many countries, like so many NGO who are working toward MHM. We are like implementing different like booklet to help people, especially those in low income like settings. And I know some of the time we do things on our own. And I'm asking, is there like any way where we can have like a collective like things? Because I think if we are a hub, we should be able to have the same understanding of things. And also like, is there any resources available, like in terms if you want to implement like one document to another country, or like for example if you want to publish it, because I think like some of the things we are doing, they are really helpful in our respective countries and we share same challenges. So is there any way where we can maybe publish it, or like making it available, or maybe if WASH can help into like publishing some of the work we are doing like in different places?
Thanks for that question. I think there are definitely one of the ways to do this is put this up on either your blog or your website, and you can reach out to Meera. We will share the email ID with you, and we can publish the content on the platform. We can also showcase your work. And add it to a list of resources that GMC and MH Hub usually keep track of. So let's definitely connect on this, Irambuna. Arundhati, I'll hand it over to you if you would like to take maybe like one last before we move forward.
I think we will have to move forward, but just to say that we do have regional collectives like the Africa Coalition for Menstrual Health. We also have the Period Equality Network that's covering a lot of organizations in East and Southern Africa. And so Irambuna and others, if you want connections to that, I think the organizing committee will be happy to facilitate that. We're running a little short on time, and we do know that the webinar has been a bit long. So if you've got questions or comments, please do put it in the chat box. We see a lot of hands up, so we see your hands, but please do put those comments in the chat box, and we'll be sure to get to it. And thanks for your patience on this. We're going to move on, saving the best for last with two keynotes from two fantastic speakers who we have. Ina as well as Joan. Ina, as many of us know, is from WASH United and leads MH Day, which is going to celebrate its 10th anniversary in 2024. So something that's very exciting for all of us who have been a part of this journey. And we've got Joan Kembebazi, who is the founder of Gufasha Girls Foundation and also a part of the Period Equality Network. And they're both going to kind of share their thoughts and reflections for what they want to see in 2024. So Ina, we're going to kickstart with you, and then Joan, we're going to move to you. Over to you, Ina.
Thanks. First of all, I want to see you all back in 2024 and even more. Let's always try to be in these webinars and engage and collaborate, because we want to know who we are, we want to know your work, and you've done a pre-survey. So yeah, let's, as Diana said, collaboration is key. So let's all stay connected. So that's my wish, not particularly. And then next year is going to be also a pivotal moment for us as the MH Day movement. Menstrual Hygiene Day will celebrate its 10 years anniversary. And while we have seen increased impact, which is great over the years, I think next year is really a time to celebrate our achievements and also in the same time also highlight what there's still the remaining challenges are. We believe there's a huge interest by the media in this story. And we also believe it's a key moment to push your governments to strengthen menstrual health and hygiene, either if they're already doing something that they do more, or really if they're a newcomer in the field, to really push them. So we're going to develop the campaign plans, etc. But I can already tease that we would like to see you all celebrating MH Day through period parties around the world. We really want to see period parties. And then we all feel connected by dressing red and so on. This can be, of course, combined with more serious advocacy before with the government. We're also going to launch a tracker for MHH funding with the support of the Global Menstrual Collective and partners such as the Case for Her, PSI, MH Hub, and UNICEF, because we really want to make transparent what funding is available, and also then with that have an advocacy tool for each and every one of you to go to your donors, go to your government and say, hey, we need to do more. There are huge gaps in that. So I think Joan is going to talk about the issue of youth, which I already mentioned. But yeah, overall, please stay connected. Please always think about MH Day as the opportunity to speak in a unified voice. We've also seen that at events. So if there's an opportunity of events coming up next year that are important, please contact Arundhati as the leader of the GMC. And when we'll take this up to see how to coordinate key messages and actors who are there, because only together we're loud, only together with a unified voice we can raise the importance of MHH that is so dear to our heart. So yeah, with that, I see we're all committed, and then let's celebrate our achievements together next year.
I love the combination of the period party and the serious advocacy. Looking forward to that. In the
party with a purpose. We call it party with a purpose.
Party with a purpose. I like that. That's a great tagline for an advocacy campaign. Party with a purpose. Joan, we're going to turn to you, and you've just returned from COP28, and you've put both youth and women's empowerment on the table in several discussions that you were a part of. So just like what many of us have done this year, that raised that MH flag, you've done the same at COP28. So I want to hear from you as such a powerful youth advocate and activist. What would you like to see us doing in 2024? And very importantly, we've started the conversation this year of how we want to bridge this global north, global south divide. How do we bring more people onto the same table to have the discussions that we care about? So share your thoughts with us on this, and what can we do in 2024? Over to you. Joan, can you hear us? Are you able to join? Just bear with us, everyone. Joan might have some connection.
Joan.
Yes.
Joan, you can unmute yourself now.
Okay. Hi. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you so much for the question. What I would love to see in 2024 is, for too long, the work of young people, especially those at grassroots, has lacked support. So what I would love to see in 2024 is to see much more resources going down to grassroots organizations that are working directly with girls and women to address MHM And I would also love to see bigger organizations making collaborations with grassroots initiatives more easier. And I would also love to see that young people, especially those that are working at grassroots, those that really understand their community's needs, being provided with the assistance they need, let it be technically, and being equipped with the tools that they need to strengthen their advocacy. And also, the most important thing that I would really love to see in 2024 is to see that we have very many feminist activists in rooms where decisions are being made. I would love to see grassroots feminist activists on board. I would love to see young people in rooms where policies are being made. I would love to see young people, feminist activists on tables with big donors. And I would love to see that our work is being amplified, our voices are being listened to. And I would also love to see, because I've personally seen the impact that global platforms can have on your life and your community and your work and your advocacy. I would love to see many young people be able to attend these global conferences, because these are spaces where we can, urge our leaders, we can push our advocacy globally. These are the spaces where we can showcase our work. These are the spaces where we can, find opportunities to forge partnerships with different people. So I think I've personally seen that impact of being in a global space on my life and work. So I would love to see many young people being supported, because you realize that most of these global conferences happen outside Africa, and it is very expensive for young people. I'll take an example. I attended Women Deliver in Kigali, Rwanda, but I can tell you that I self-sponsored myself to attend this conference. But when it came to COP28, which has just recently ended, it was really hard for me. So I had to source out funding, of which, this funding came in late. But if these global conferences are really being accessible and or maybe if young people are being supported to attend these conferences, it could really help in our advocacy. It could really help to bridge the gap, because everyone comes from different environments and different communities. So every time you're in this space, you share, you network, you learn from each other, you realize that you have similarities or maybe you have differences. So you try to find where you can work together, you try to find where you can learn from each other. And this is one of the things that can really help strengthen our grassroots advocacy. So literally what I would really love to see next year is to see that young people are being listened to, because there is nothing that is much more important to us young people as giving us a platform, feeling that we are being heard and our voices are being amplified, because we are representing our communities, we are representing girls and women in our communities, we are representing their needs. It's not that if Joan is speaking, it is Joan herself speaking. No, I'm speaking on behalf of girls. I'm speaking on behalf of my community. So every time I'm on a platform like this, every time I'm in a global space where I speak, I attend some sessions, it's not me. It is, I'm just a representative. Showcasing, putting out the needs and demands of my community. So I would really love to see that our work is being amplified and supported in 2024, because it's really been long. Our work has not been, our work has not really been supported. It has not really been given a platform. Yeah, so that is what I would really love to see in 2024.
Joan, thank you. That was a really powerful call, I think, for us to also support young people like you and so many others who have met in this journey, and to provide them with different kinds of platforms to share their stories, their journeys, but also the kind of approaches that they've used to be able to highlight these issues and bring about change in their community. So thank you for highlighting that. Anyone who wants to learn more from Joan about her recent COP28 experience can reach out to her, because we will, I think we've shared her details on our poster. So with this, we come to the end of a rather long but a very rich webinar, which we hope that we've been able to capture some of the key highlights of 2023. It has been quite the year, given the amount of progress that we've seen. However, as both Bhuvna and Ina had highlighted in the very beginning, there are some important misses and some important trends that we need to keep on top of and make sure that we're beginning to address next year. And just a couple of things before I hand off to Bhuvna. We do have the resources that we mentioned throughout today's webinar, which we will share with you. There will be a recording that will be available along with a quick takeaways that we'll share with the added resources from several of our speakers. We'll share that as a Christmas present by the end of next week. We're also delighted to share that we're going to try and keep up the Fireside Chat series in 2024. So we welcome any thoughts and suggestions for how we can do this, and anyone who'd like to collaborate with us as we think through this. So reach out to Bhuvna and me if you're interested and if you want to share your thoughts. And we'll be in touch very soon. And with that, Bhuvna, over to you to close up.
Thank you, Arundhati. Thank you so much. I mean, there are a few points that I think very powerfully are staying with me. One, with respect to what Joan mentioned about providing platforms for organizations in the Global South. And what does it mean to make the work more accessible, but also platform engagement more accessible? Relooking at what comprises research and evidence and decolonizing narratives through nuance, and putting the choice in the hand of individuals who menstruate. These are some core concepts that I take away as food for thought and as things that I want to reflect on as we close the year and go into yet another, hopefully super exciting one and an eventful one for the menstrual health ecosystem. Thank you for sticking around. This has been a slightly longer than usual webinar, but we're really encouraged to see most of you being around here. And I would really love to thank all the speakers for taking out time and putting an intentional effort into what they spoke about and reflected on. And thanks Arundhati and Ina for everything that you've put together, and Ritika for just being the star with all the collaterals in comms and outreach. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Wishing everyone a very a healthy and a peaceful end to 2023 and a great start to 2024. Take care, everyone.